All right, it is episode number 3, and we are back at it again. As always, it's your boy, Coach Coop, and my boy, Jay. First off, we want to thank all of you guys for tuning in and continuing to be here as we go through and drop knowledge and then continue to expand for coaches, players, teams, and all others tuning in. Now, remember, subscribe, like, comment, share, and also turn on reminders because every Tuesday at 8 a.m., we drop a new episode. So today, we're going to be discussing another big topic and a reason kind of why we started this thing. What makes a great coach? Now, before we give our perspective on this, we're going to go ahead and read off some of the answers that y'all go ahead and drop for us on what you guys think makes a great coach. So, number one, and this is kind of on the strength and conditioning fitness world, on what some people think of is a great coach, not only just in sports. Coach corrects form, great energy, passionate, approachable, lots of knowledge in health and wellness. So again, that was kind of more on the fitness-based side of things, which I can agree on. Knowing the correct form, knowing how to get people energized, passionate about what you're doing. Passion is one of those things that you cannot lie about, right? If you're in there and you're just kind of lollygagging around, people can kind of tell that you're not really fully into it. And then having knowledge in health and wellness, huge importance, especially in the fitness world. Genuine connection with your people goes a long way and building trust from the jump. Huge one right there, right? Because nobody's going to go to bat for you. Nobody's going to run through the wall for you if they don't feel like they know who you are, right? If you haven't given them any bit of who you are or gotten to know who they are, yeah, you're most likely just talking at people instead of talking with the people or for the people. Next one is someone that makes you want to do better and not quit. I think that's huge importance for a lot of coaches, is knowing how to push your people and getting them to that level of where they, like I said, feel like they can run through a wall for you, but also know that you got their back. Next one, who the hell knows? That's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to see who knows and who can give us little tips on what makes a great coach. Consistency in my own life. If I can't uphold the standard, then I shouldn't be trying to coach. Ooh, I like that one. Not just motivation, but having people show up even when they are tired or sore. Yeah, can agree with that. Someone being able to coach what you've coached to others. So coach what you've coached to others. So being able to, I like that. Being able to teach what you've learned to others in a way they understand. So not only how you understand it, but can they turn it around and teach it how they know? Knowing how to administer motivation in different ways for diverse groups, right? Because not everybody is motivated the same way. Some people need to be yelled at. Some people just need to be talked at. Some people just like to be left alone and just go with what's on the board or go with what they've been told. So that's what we got from you guys. So, Jay, for you, can you tell us a time or who you thought was your best coach and why?
Those are great answers, by the way. I feel like just to kind of piggyback off everything that they said, I feel like to give a shout out, like I feel like honestly I've had like nothing but great coaches. I feel like I've been blessed with having nothing but great coaches. And I feel like the one thing that everybody said in those answers was just like everybody was personable. Everybody, all those coaches that I had, and I'm sure you can say the same thing, were just good with people. All those coaches had left themselves open, would always leave the office door open or just like themselves open to relationships. There's coaches in my past, strength coaches, position coaches, head coaches that I built strong relationships with. There's coaches in my past that I didn't really have like a strong relationship with, but they were great coaches, right? But from top to bottom, I think one thing that I was lucky enough to have was all my coaches were great with people. And I think that speaks to, how you talk to people, understanding when you can or can't say something to somebody, like that respect. But yeah, I feel like being personable like checks off a lot of boxes.
Yeah, for sure. I think just being able to, because personal means you're able to relate to others, right? Like you might not all come from the same situation, same area or something like that, but finding out who the person is and being able to find something in there that you guys can relate on, I think goes a long way to show the person that you're working with and the athletes or the team or even your coaching staff that you're working with that like you actually care, right? And that's a huge part of this business. It's just not show up and tell people what to do and then you expect them to do it. Like, you've got to actually know what gets people to tick, right? You got to know like what gets them to go, and also like what doesn't get them to go. So you actually like care about the little things that are going on about them. And I think that's a huge part about being personal and just coaching, because some of the great coaches just know their people from top to bottom. And that it's hard, it's tricky. That's not to say that like you just go in one day and like everybody just loves you. That's not what's going to happen. Like, nobody really gets into the coaching business just for everybody to love them, because you won't be loved by everybody. It's really just getting everybody to kind of go in the same direction. I think that's the hardest part about being a coach, a leader in these industries, is just because you're trying to go one way. And if anything veers off of that, how do you bring people back to it? I think that's a huge part to like think about as a coach, because I mean, you yourself, you're working with a team, you're working with a lot of youth athletes, right? You'll get guys that come in and try to distract the rest of the group, try to be the class clowns, try to be the funny guys, or the guys that the new thing nowadays is to show up and act like you don't really care, right? That's like the new cool thing for this generation. Like, getting them to like believe in what you're doing, but also like when you see them straying off, bringing them back and knowing that, you know what I mean? Because you've been with them long enough. How do you get guys to get back on path?
I think there's like a psychology aspect to it too, where it's like, you may have like a group of 20, 30 guys in the weight room, but it's like there's only 5 guys that have like a big influence, and everybody does what they do. And, whatever they say is funny. So it's like, I think knowing your population, like deep, and understanding like, these 5 guys, if I have control over these 5 guys and understand like where they're at on a daily basis, then I can affect like the total mass of everybody else. So, and I mean, there's some times where it's just like, there's so far that I'll go, but sometimes I'll meet certain needs of those kids that can be a pain in my ass, just to make sure everything else is flowing. Right.
Right.
But yeah, I think it definitely takes a little bit like that psychology aspect and being personable, and an athlete coming in and being like, knowing like, okay, like this isn't usual. I'm like, are you okay today? Like, what's up? Like, what's up with you? Or the class clown guy comes in, he's not as enthusiastic that day, so it's just like, hey, what's up? And sometimes I'll notice it where it's like the funny guy, the funny loud guy comes in, and he's more so chill and not
Oh,
really
you
like
definitely know
excited,
something's
and
up.
that kind of,
Yeah.
exactly, something's up, and that'll affect the rest of the lift with the guys. Not everybody is like as energized, because he's usually the guy that brings all the motivation for the team. So I think it takes knowing your group, definitely.
Yeah. And would you say did you learn that like right away, or did you like kind of sit back and kind of observe the room before? Well, I mean, obviously you've been there for 8 seasons, so like you've seen the guys, how they come in and out. Pause on that. But like, if you were to give like a piece of advice for a coach that's taking over a team, like how would you tell them to become a better coach and learn their group?
I think it's one of those things you'll just have to learn. You and I, we've operated in team spaces for a long time, so I know other coaches that have operated. They were athletes, but they operated in like, one of them was a tennis athlete, and it's just like, he's not going to be able to operate so great in a team sport, environment. It's going to take him a little bit to try and to figure that out, and working with different personalities, as especially with football teams, we always say we have the craziest personalities just because we're deep. That's
Oh
probably
yeah.
one of the deepest sports. You have like, I mean, our locker room had like 100 plus lockers.
Yes.
So it's like you're operating with different personalities. All these players can have different influences, people from different places, and you have to be able to work with that. So there's definitely like, there's just a lot of qualities that you're going to have to just learn as you go, with regards to leadership and being personable and understanding how your influence and the hierarchy of influences. I feel like a lot of those things you figure it out as you go.
Yeah. And that's not to say a tennis strength conditioning coach or a tennis coach can't go into, coaching a team. It's just, it's also very important as a coach to know your limitations and know
Yeah,
what you're fully capable of working with. Like if you go from working with individual sports to now you're working with like team sports, it's a big transition. Like it's hard to learn all those different types of personalities, and it's okay to at first maybe you do like you delegate the power, kind of like you kind of like somebody that's been around maybe, or you go to that senior group, or you go to those veterans that have been on the team, and you're like, hey man, like I need you guys to lead in this certain way, so that way like you can kind of sit back and like observe how things were run and how they should be run, and then kind of pick a piece, what do you want to change in there, and also just coming
absolutely.
in what your philosophy is and how you want to lead stuff. I think is another huge part, because you can't, it's easier for a strength coach that's been around for a while. If we look at like if we look in college or we look in the pros, like a guy that has been with a team, 5+ years, right? Usually, whatever he has implemented is already like it's there. Like that's the brick and mortar already there, because the seniors and everything else are gonna stay in line. Now, if you're coming in right away, like you want to assert your dominance, right? You want to say this is how it's going to be run, but there's also a point that you also have to like sit back and see what needs to be done. And what I mean by that is you got to like figure out what your team needs more from you. Do they need to be, they didn't need a guy that's going to be in their face all the time? Or do they need a guy that's going to kind of pull guys aside and kind of talk to them individually? Do they need to be, are they one of those teams that, hey, they show up late, so you need to like implement things like punishment for like if they are showing up late? Are they a team that shows up on time, so they're a team that like needs to be rewarded for those things? Like there's so many different
Yeah,
avenues that you had to learn as a coach. It's like, hey, where do you start at? And that's, I think that's
no, yeah.
tough, but I think
There's a
that's
lot
the
of
enjoy.
psychology in coaching too. I feel like
Oh yeah,
most coaches have like extensive backgrounds in psychology, where it's like you have
I,
to know, just like you said, whether it's like positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, or things like that. You have to understand when to implement things like that.
and I think another big part of that is being able to practice what you preach. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like if you're a coach that talks a lot about discipline and being on time and doing things the correct way, and and I'm not saying like in your regular everyday life, like you've got to live like a perfect angel every time. I'm talking about like when you're present in your workforce, right? You're in front of all these guys. You got to do everything that you say that you like say to them, right?
Yeah.
So if you tell guys like, hey, like while you're lifting, you can't be joking around, or hey, I need you here 5 minutes ahead of time or 10 minutes ahead of time to stretch and get loose, or hey, no, like yelling back at the refs and stuff like that. You got to do the same exact thing. Like
Yeah.
you can't get caught slipping at any moment, because the second you slip with it, there is somebody, because it happens everywhere. Like you're on a team with like you said, sometimes there's locker rooms with 100 guys. There's about 15, 20 guys that don't like anything that you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
So the second you mess up, that 15, 20 guys is going to take what you messed up at and now try to run with it and spread it across the locker room to make you look like the bad guy.
Yeah.
So you got to practice what you preach, right? Like you cannot, because this is what gives you the credibility for all your people. Like this is what gets them to buy in and follow you. And then those 10 to 20 guys that don't like what you're saying, those guys will be silenced at all times if you're continuously like you're consistent and your credibility is always high. Like you practice what you preach. And don't get me wrong, there's human fault, right? There will be times that you do show up late, or you're just not in the best mood, or you just like something went on in life, right? That's life. It happens. But you got to find a way to flip the switch and put on those hats, right? When you're in front of the guys. Otherwise, it will eat you alive, bro. I'm telling you, I've seen it. I've been in a lot of locker rooms now, um, to see who buys in, who the cancers are, who the leaders are, um, and what coaches are actually preaching. And I think that's a hard thing to do, especially when you, like you said, we've got guys from all different walks of life, and then when we come over here to Europe, we got guys that got regular day jobs.
Yeah.
And they're not like how we were fully professional, getting paid to play. Guys are coming from everyday walks of life, so sometimes these guys aren't showing up and actually wanting to listen to what you have to say. Like as a coach, like I would say that. I mean, I know it's tough in America. I would say that Europe is pretty tough to learn how to become a really great coach at, especially in American football, because you got guys that don't show up every week. you got guys that only show up on the weekend when there's a game, and consider themselves football players. How do you, as a coach, allow that? How do you change the culture? How do you come in and breed the culture from the jump and get that, knock that out? Now, I don't have the answer to that because I haven't had to be a head coach. I don't know what that's like. All I can say is that that's probably a huge thing, that if you're thinking about coaching, especially over here in Europe, is how you want to implement your culture to these athletes here. Because yeah, we have the ELF, we got the GFL, we've got, you know, your country leagues, but it isn't as important to them as it is to us. You know, showing
Yeah.
up to every practice, showing up to lift every day, not missing a game because we had some family holiday planned, even though we knew the game was, you know, the schedule for the season and what it was going to be. So as a coach, I would really say for you guys, come over and implement your culture. But my next thing would also be is not every great player becomes a great coach, and not every great coach was once a great player. Right? So for all my players out there that are looking to get into coaching, doesn't mean that you're going to be a great coach. Right? And every one of those great coaches out there, trust me, not all of them were great players. If you look at Andy Reid, right? Look at Bill Belichick, right? You look at Nick Saban, right? You look at like some of these top guys, not all of them were great players. They just worked really hard to become great coaches, right?
Yeah.
And it flips it around. Like every great player, like every, you know, you look at Randy Moss, you look at Tom Brady, you look at, you name any of your favorite top player. Not all of them are going to be great coaches. Not some of them don't even want to get into coaching because they know like what it takes to be a great coach, right? There's a lot of work that goes into being a great coach. Just the same amount of work that we put into getting ready for the season and being able to show up and play every game is the same amount of work you had to put in as a coach, right?
No, yeah, definitely.
Nothing less. Like you cannot put it, and that's even on the strength and conditioning side too. Like you cannot just like say, "Hey, I want to be a strength and conditioning coach," because I know some workouts that I did with my college coach or my former professional coach, and I'm just going to put it together and it's going to work for everybody. No, it doesn't. It does not work at all. Make sure that you like learn the science behind it, because you know yourself. Like when you first started, like we said in episode 1, like you were nervous, like you were just following what Nick had for you and everything like that. Like,
Yeah.
like how do you think? Now, would you? I'll get a little controversial. Would you consider yourself a great coach?
Would I consider myself a great coach? I wouldn't consider myself a great coach. I consider myself a good coach. I feel like I still have like a lot of imposter syndrome. And there's things that I look back on maybe a year ago or a couple months ago where I'm just like, damn, I probably should have done that, or I probably shouldn't have said that. But I definitely feel like I am still learning and challenging myself to be a great coach. Um, I think there were a lot of things when I first got into coaching that um, I learned were just how you were saying or speaking on, great coaches thinking or great athletes thinking they become great coaches. Just like you can't regurgitate everything that you've done and think it's going to work for the rest of the population. It just doesn't work like that. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest things, and actually like having to dive down deep into principles and concepts about certain qualities or certain parameters that you're going to have to try and improve with your athletes. Is just like it's not as simple as it may seem for you. You were a genetic freak.
Right.
You're not, and that's the thing is, and I'm sure Coop, where it's just like as coaches understand you're not always going to have genetic freaks that walk through that door. You're going to have
Hell
guys
no.
that are going to annoy you because you're going to tell you think that not everybody's going to come in and know how to squat and hinge and run. You're going to have to teach some guys how to run. They have their their left leg up and their left arm up for a sprint. It's like I think that was probably one of the biggest shocks for me, where I'm just like, bro, like you don't know how to squat, and I'm like, having to like take steps back, and I'm just like, I never really, you always think you're just gonna have athletes come in through the door,
No,
but
it doesn't ever start like that.
no,
No. Yeah, I mean, it's always hard. It's hard to be a critic of yourself, to decide whether you're a great coach or a good coach. I'm right there along with you. I think I'm just a good coach. I haven't reached my peak yet. And I think that's also a credit to, like, I've jumped around too many times. Like a lot of us that get into this business, like we start coaching, and we start strength and conditioning, but we jump around from niche to niche, right? Like you say you want to work on speed, but then like somebody wants to work on strength and conditioning, somebody wants to do just general fitness, and you get into all these stuff and you try to become a jack of all trades instead of a master at like one thing, and then being able to work on other stuff. And I feel like for me, I know for a fact, like I know what the imposter syndrome's like, from coming over here to Europe to like working with athletes, which I wouldn't say we're the highest level of athletes when I came here. It was then also going back home and now working with general population and seeing how like how does what I do correlate to what they're trying to do? Like they're just trying to live an everyday normal life. So like
Yeah.
as a coach, how do you like switch back and forth? And we're realizing like, hey, like sometimes it's okay to like say no to things that like I don't actually want to do, and like stick to like what I'm like actually passionate and love to do, and get really good at that. And then, put other people in positions to work with those people. Right. Cause now I'm just like spending a lot more time trying to figure out things that like, I don't really enjoy that. You know what I mean? I'm not really like fond of doing it. I'll do it just because it will pay the bills and I'll earn some money. But like, for what? Like,
Yeah.
is that making me any better at what I actually truly am trying to get to or become better at? Not really. Most of the time, it's just fillers. It's just like in workouts and programs, right? You look at a program, you're putting it together, you're like, oh, I got space here, so let me fill it with something, right?
Yeah.
Like, was it really needed? Like that's the kind of way that like I've kind of looked at myself as like a coach. Like, have I done everything I need to become good at what I'm really passionate about? Right. And that's, working with people in the very sports specific side of things, of just like working with speed. Like that's what I enjoy doing. So how am I making myself better as a coach? How am I learning from others and reaching out to others, to hear their perspectives and learn from them, to now implement it to my athletes to make them better athletes? So I think at the end of the day, like becoming a great coach is tough, but you also got to be willing to learn and sit back sometimes and not just like, you've got to run into a wall a couple times, but you also got to be willing to ask questions and continue to learn. Um,
Yeah.
and I think one big thing for me is also don't be afraid to get in the trenches with your people. So this is more on the coaching side of things, that are maybe like your head coach, or your assistant coach or something like that, and you've got a whole position that you work with. Don't be afraid, or even a strength coach. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to get in the trenches. You know,
Yeah.
like sometimes I feel like we always just kind of want to speak from the booth or speak from like our desk or from where our position is higher up. Like sometimes it's okay. And some of the strength coaches I've always had the most respect for is those guys that kind of get in there and like, all right, well, we all going to do this workout together today. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's death, I know it sucks, but we all going to do this today. Because then you're like, oh shoot, like coach isn't only just like telling me what to do or showing me how to do it. Like he's actually in it with us. Like that
Yeah.
means that like he knows like the suffering we're going through. So like if he's experienced suffering, okay, like it's cool. Like we gonna all do it. And I would say the same
Yeah.
thing for some of the coaches that are just coaching positions and stuff like that too. Like, okay, maybe you're out of it now, right? Maybe you're not as good as you once were. But sometimes some guys are like we said earlier, are visual learners. So they've got to see you do it and also see that you're fully in it with them. I don't know how you feel about that,
No, yeah, I totally agree.
because it's always easy to kind of like we said, you can call plays from the booth, but like also, are you listening to the guys that are actually running down there running the play?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all that Madden stuff, that shit looks great, right? But it works for a computer game, right? They don't always correlate over to what's happening on the field. Or maybe
Yeah.
you just don't have the players that are in position to do that, right? So if you're sitting up there in the booth, like you got to talk to the players, you got to talk to your coaches, and this is what I'm talking about: getting to learn everything across the board. Like maybe that isn't the right position that you're putting them in, right? As a coach, it is no longer, and I think this is the hard part for a lot of coaches, that it's no longer about you when you become a coach. Like it's never about you anymore. Like it's about the people that you're working with and essentially working for, right? Because now
Yeah.
you're trying to put them in positions to win, right? And once they win, like that helps you win, yes, at the end. But when you start in this, like it's always to help people out, right? Like that. Like when I think about why I got into coaching, is because I wanted to see other athletes get to a point to where I got to and live out the dreams that I did.
Totally.
Yeah. So, I mean, I ain't got much else on what makes a great coach, but I know we've got some cool things down the line. You know, episode 4 is coming up, so stay tuned for that.
We got some great coaches coming up.
We got a lot of great coaches coming up, like we named in episode 1. And it's super excited about some other future endeavors we got coming. As always, if you guys have coaches that you feel should jump on and be interviewed by us, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Send them over our way. Remember, subscribe, like, comment. You can turn on your reminders because remember, every Tuesday at 8 a.m. we will be dropping a new episode. Soon to come are all the coaches' interviews. Some really, really great ones coming up. Dropping a lot of knowledge for you guys, a lot of tips, and just some people that you can potentially work with down the line. And if you're a coach on here, don't be afraid to also reach out to these coaches and learn a little bit more from them because they all are open to share the knowledge and the practices that they have been using to make their athletes better athletes. All right, so that is episode number 3, and we'll catch you guys later.